He told his friends. She's boring, she'll never leave me. That night, I handed him a plane ticket and divorce papers, but what I did after made headlines. Where in the world are you watching this from, and what time is it? Subscribe now, because this story won't just entertain you, it might haunt you. I don't remember when it started, this sinking feeling deep in my chest, but I know exactly when it became unbearable. I had spent years pretending it didn't exist, like a stain on your favorite shirt that you refuse to acknowledge because you're too afraid of what it might mean. For the longest time, I told myself that it was normal, that the emptiness, the constant ache in my heart, was just a phase. Maybe I thought it was supposed to be there, or maybe I just didn't know how to live without it anymore. But then I saw the look in his eyes. It wasn't the kind of look you forget, the kind of look you can dismiss as harmless. No, this one cut deep like a slow, steady burn that started at my soul and crawled outward, lacing every nerve with doubt. He had no idea that the woman he thought he knew was already unraveling. He never saw the cracks, the way I had learned to hide the pain in my eyes, the way I smiled just a little too wide, as if that could somehow fool the world into thinking I wasn't drowning in my own mind. I had spent so many years pretending that I had it all together, trying to be everything for him, for my family, for everyone but myself. They never saw the little things, the late nights spent lying awake, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding with regret, the way I would pause before answering the phone, hoping I wouldn't hear his voice on the other end. I guess I was always too afraid to admit that maybe I didn't want this life anymore. Maybe I didn't want to be his shadow, his afterthought, his boring. But I kept quiet, kept my head down, because that's what you're supposed to do, right? You get married, you become a wife, and you make it work. You swallow your sadness, your dreams, and you play your part. But somewhere along the way I lost myself. Somewhere between being the dutiful wife and trying to be the perfect woman, I forgot who I was, what I wanted, and what I deserved. He would say things, little jabs that didn't seem so bad at first. Like the time he told his friends right in front of me, "She's boring. She'll never leave me. She's too stuck." And maybe I had been stuck, but I wasn't blind. I saw the way he looked at other women, how his affection for me had faded into routine, into obligation. And in that moment I realized something that terrified me. He was right. I was stuck. But not because I couldn't leave him. No, it was because I had chosen to stay, to let myself fade into the background of a life I didn't want anymore. And that was my mistake. It was the moment I stopped feeling sorry for myself, stopped waiting for someone to rescue me, stopped waiting for permission to change. It was the moment I decided I didn't want to be boring anymore. I didn't want to be invisible. So, when I handed him that plane ticket, when I slid the divorce papers across the table, it wasn't just about ending our marriage. It was about reclaiming everything I had lost, about waking up from the numbness I had let define me for too long. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, just like how everything had started. And that was the most terrifying part. I wasn't afraid anymore. I had been waiting for someone else to make the first move. But I realized the only person who could change my life was me. The air in the room felt thick, like everything I had ever known was hanging on the edge of a knife. I remember how he looked at me, stunned, like he couldn't fathom what had just happened. He didn't understand. He thought I was weak, that I would always forgive him, that I would stay in the life he had planned for me. But the truth was, I had been planning my own escape for far longer than he knew. He thought he had me figured out. He thought I would never leave. But that was the night everything changed. And as I watched him leave, suitcase in hand, without a word, I couldn't help but feel a sick sense of satisfaction. But even as the finality of that moment sank in, something else began to stir in me. There was an unease I couldn't shake. Something was off, like the silence in the room had stretched just a little too long. Like there was a piece of the puzzle missing. I picked up my phone. The screen lit up with a text from my mother. Her message as cold as always. "You've done the right thing." But something about it felt wrong. I had always thought of her as my ally, my voice of reason. But now, as I stared at her words, I couldn't help but wonder if I had been wrong about her too. Was she really on my side? Or had she been watching from the sidelines, waiting for me to make this mistake, to take this step? The weight of it all hit me suddenly, and I didn't know if it was fear or something else, but I couldn't push it away. I put the phone down and stared out the window, watching the night unfold in front of me, as if the world outside was waiting for me to make my next move. And just before I turned away, A figure passed by in the corner of my vision. A shadow moving too quickly. It was him. But he wasn't supposed to be here. Not now. Not after everything. And in that moment the unease settled in deep in my gut, because I realized this was just the beginning. I should have known something wasn't right, but in the days after he left, I buried myself in the quiet. I thought it was peace, but it was more like the calm before a storm, and I had no idea just how much chaos was still coming. I told myself I had made the right decision, that I was finally free, but the truth? The truth was I had no idea who I was without him. I kept looking over my shoulder, waiting for a sign, some comfort, something to tell me that I was going to be okay. But everything felt like it was slipping through my fingers. The night he left was only the beginning. I had no idea just how deep the lies went, how much I had been blinded by the life I thought I knew. It started with my mother. The text she had sent, so simple, so cold. "You've done the right thing." Those words, they haunted me, because for the first time I began to wonder if she had ever really been on my side. Growing up, I had always seen her as the rock of our family, the one who held everything together, even when my father wasn't around. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I hadn't questioned her before. But now the words she had spoken to me, the way she had always been just a little too distant, felt like a lie. I needed to know what she wasn't telling me, so I started digging. I didn't expect what I found. The letters were old, yellowed with time, tucked away in a drawer that hadn't been opened in years. I remember holding the first one in my hand, the faint smell of ink and paper, and thinking how strange it was that I had never seen them before. They were from my father, a man I had been told wasn't worth the trouble of thinking about. But these letters, they painted a different picture. There was something in the words, in the way he wrote to her. I had always believed that he had left us, that he had abandoned us for good. But these letters said otherwise. In them, he begged her to come back, to take him back. He spoke of regret, of lost time, of wanting to fix what had been broken between them. But the strangest part? She had never told me any of this. She had always made it sound like she had been the one to walk away, like she had been the one who had made the hard choices for us, for me. But now I saw the truth. She had lied. Not just to me, but to herself. The pieces started falling into place, but with each one, the puzzle became harder to understand. My mother, the woman I had trusted, the woman who had always been so strong, was just as broken as I was. She had made mistakes too, but what did that mean for me? Was I just another lie she had told herself to make it all feel easier? I started seeing her in a different light, a woman who had sacrificed pieces of herself to keep up appearances, to keep the family intact. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much of my life had been built on those same lies. He had never really left. He had never really cared about me. He was just as trapped in the world he had built for himself as I was. But the thing that hurt the most, the thing that made me feel like everything I had ever known had been a lie, was the secret I discovered next. It was a conversation I overheard by accident. My mother had been talking to someone on the phone, someone I didn't recognize, someone whose voice sent a chill down my spine. At first I couldn't make out what they were saying, but then I heard my name. They were talking about me. I don't know why, but I stayed there frozen, listening. "She doesn't know," my mother's voice said low, like she was afraid someone might hear. "She still thinks she's the victim in all of this." The words hit me like a slap. I wasn't sure what it meant, but I knew one thing for certain. Something was horribly wrong. The silence that followed felt suffocating. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears as I tried to piece together the fragments of that conversation. Was my mother talking about me? What did she mean I didn't know? And why did it feel like she was hiding something from me? The more I thought about it, the more my mind spiraled. I had spent my entire life believing that I was the one who had been wronged, that I was the one who had been hurt, that I was the victim in all of this. But now I wasn't so sure anymore. Maybe I had been blind. Maybe the world I had built in my mind, the one where I was the innocent, had been just as fake as everything else. The pieces of the puzzle kept slipping away, and with each new revelation, my world felt less and less stable. I started to pull away from everything, from everyone. I wasn't sure who I was anymore, or who I was meant to be. I wanted to scream, to rage against the unfairness of it all, but I held it inside, letting it twist and turn until I couldn't recognize myself. My emotions were a storm. A cloud of confusion and anger that I couldn't escape. And then just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I found out something that shattered everything I thought I knew. A phone call, a name, a truth so ugly I almost couldn't believe it. My best friend, the one I had trusted with my darkest thoughts, the one I had leaned on through everything, had been in on it. She knew. She knew what was happening, what I was too blind to see. She had watched me fall apart, watched me make mistake after mistake, and she had done nothing. She had never said a word. But what she said to me on that phone call changed everything. "I'm sorry, but you were never meant to win, you know that, right?" I couldn't even process the words. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room, and I was left standing there, choking on the truth. All these years I had been fighting for something that was never mine to begin with. It wasn't just my marriage that was built on lies. It was everything. I had been a pawn in someone else's game, and I didn't even know it. And in that moment, the walls I had built around myself, the ones that had kept me safe, started to crumble. I didn't know who to trust anymore, not even myself. The silence that followed her words was deafening, but it was the silence I needed. I didn't know what to do next, but I knew one thing. This wasn't just the end of my marriage. This was the end of everything I thought I knew. And as I stared at the phone, I realized, with a coldness that scared me, that I was no longer just a victim. I was ready to fight back. But even then, I had no idea just how much the world had been lying to me, or how far I would have to go to uncover the truth. The next move, I wasn't sure what it would be, but one thing was certain. It was all about to unravel. And I couldn't stop it now. I wasn't sure when the shift happened, but somewhere between the lies and the betrayals, I could feel myself changing. It was like my heart had turned cold, and in its place something sharper, something more dangerous began to grow. The pain was still there, I could feel it, but it wasn't driving me anymore. I wasn't the broken woman who had stumbled through her life, hoping for something better. No, now I was someone else, someone who knew what she wanted. And what I wanted more than anything was revenge. I could feel the weight of it on my chest, heavy and consuming, but it didn't scare me anymore. It steadied me. The anger that had once burned hot and wild was now controlled, methodical. I was no longer an emotional wreck. I was calculating. I wasn't just going to let this go. I would make them all pay for the lies they told, for the secrets they kept. But as I started digging deeper, as I began to peel back the layers, the truth hit me harder than I expected. My mother wasn't just complicit in all of this, she had orchestrated it. She had been the mastermind, the one pulling the strings behind the scenes, and I had never even suspected it. All those years I had been her pawn, just like everyone else. It was her who had manipulated my father into leaving, not the other way around. She had convinced him to walk away, to leave me behind, so that she could play her perfect little game. And that was just the beginning. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep her involvement went. The letters from my father, the ones I thought had been the truth, were just part of her plan. She had kept them from me, made sure I never saw them so that I would stay angry, stay confused, stay dependent on her. But I wasn't just angry anymore. I was cold. I was methodical. And I knew exactly what I had to do. But it wasn't just my mother who had betrayed me. It was my best friend too. The one who had told me I was never meant to win. The one who had watched me fall apart and had done nothing. I found out the truth about her too. She wasn't just a passive observer. She was a part of the plan. A willing accomplice. She had been in on everything from the start, feeding me lies, letting me think I was the one who had been wronged, while all along she had been manipulating me, pushing me towards the exact outcome they wanted. But I wasn't blind anymore. I saw it all. And when I confronted her, when I looked her in the eyes, there was no remorse. There was nothing but cold indifference. "You were always too weak to see it, weren't you?" she said, her voice flat. "You never had a chance." I wanted to scream, to lash out, to hurt her like she had hurt me. But I didn't. I just stood there, feeling the anger bubble up inside me. But instead of letting it out, I held it in. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to cry. I needed to plan. I needed to make them all feel the same pain they had made me feel. And I was going to do it quietly, methodically. They wouldn't see it coming. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was a plan. I started gathering pieces, small things at first, a conversation here, a text message there, a moment of weakness from someone who thought they could hide their true intentions. I began to see through them, to see who they really were. The people I thought I could trust, the ones I had leaned on for so long, were nothing but shadows, nothing but empty promises. I thought my world was falling apart, but in reality it was just coming into focus. Everything I had believed in was a lie. And the worst part? I had been too blinded by my own pain to see it until now. But I wasn't afraid anymore. The fear that had once held me back, that had made me second-guess everything, was gone. It had been replaced by something far more powerful: control. I wasn't going to let them destroy me. I was going to destroy them. And I would do it in a way they'd never expect. One by one, they'd realize that I wasn't the broken woman they thought I was. I was a storm waiting to happen. But there was still something missing. There was still a piece of the puzzle that I hadn't uncovered. I knew there was more to this story, more than just the betrayal of my mother and my best friend. But I couldn't figure out what it was yet. I knew I was getting closer, though. I could feel it. That night when I was alone in my room, I found something, a letter, hidden in the back of my closet. It wasn't from anyone I recognized. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the address was clear. My mother's old house, the one I hadn't seen in years. The one she never spoke about. My heart raced as I tore the envelope open, my hands shaking. The letter inside was simple, but it sent a chill down my spine. The truth is closer than you think. Don't trust anyone. Not even yourself. I couldn't breathe. My mind was racing. Who had sent this? What was it trying to tell me? I didn't know, but I felt like I had just stumbled onto something huge, something that would change everything. The walls that had been closing in on me now felt like they were opening up, revealing a path I wasn't sure I was ready to walk. But there was no turning back. And that's when I stopped being afraid. And just like that, everything I had been holding on to, every lie, every secret, every ounce of pain clicked into place. The letter had been the last piece of the puzzle, the one thing that set everything into motion. It was the final push, the one that broke the dam wide open. I stood there in that quiet room, the weight of it all bearing down on me, feeling the flood of realizations, of truths that I had been blind to for so long. My mother wasn't just a puppet master. She had been running the entire show. She had planned it all. But there was more, so much more, that I had never even begun to understand. All these years I had thought I was the victim. I had thought my world had been shattered because of what they had done to me. But the truth was, I had been a pawn in a game I couldn't even see. A game that my mother and my best friend had been playing for far too long. But now the tables had turned. I wasn't the one who was broken. I was the one with the power. They had underestimated me, thought I was too fragile, too weak, too easily manipulated. They hadn't known what I was capable of when I stopped playing by their rules. And I had made sure every move I made would strike exactly where it would hurt them most. My mother thought she had me, thought she could control me. But what she didn't know was that I had been watching her, studying her every move, learning everything about her, about the way she worked, about the way she thought. She had made one fatal mistake. She thought I was still that little girl, the one who needed her, the one who was scared to be alone. But that was the girl I had left behind. Now I was standing in front of her, not as her daughter, but as the one who would bring everything crashing down. I hadn't just come for revenge. I had come for the truth. And the truth was far more damning than anything I had ever imagined. My mother's perfect little world? It was built on lies, on manipulation, on the destruction of everyone who got too close. And as I stood there watching her falter, I realized something. She wasn't the powerful woman I had always feared. She was just as broken as I had been. Maybe even more. She had destroyed so many lives, including her own, just to keep up a facade. But she wouldn't be able to keep it up anymore. The walls were crumbling. I had finally seen through the lies, and there was no way she could stop me now. The confrontation wasn't loud. It wasn't full of screaming or chaos. It was quiet, controlled. I didn't need to shout to make my point. I just had to look at her. Just had to say the words that had been building up inside me for so long. "You were never my mother," I said, my voice steady, cold. "You were just a woman pretending to be one." And then I walked away. I didn't need to see her reaction. I didn't need to hear her try to explain or beg for forgiveness. I had heard enough. I had seen enough. What I didn't expect was the betrayal that came next. My best friend, the one who had been with me through it all, the one who had promised to stand by me, had been waiting for the right moment to strike. But she hadn't planned on me being ready for her. When I confronted her, when I finally let her know that I knew what she had done, she didn't deny it. Instead, she laughed. She laughed like it was some kind of joke, like she hadn't just torn me apart with her lies. "You never figured it out, did you?" she said. "You were always too focused on your own pain to see what was really happening. You were always so desperate to be loved that you didn't even notice who was using you." And in that moment I understood. She hadn't been my friend. She had been just another player in the game, another pawn in my mother's world. And I had been blind to it. But not anymore. I wasn't the naive girl I used to be. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I wasn't going to let anyone get away with it. It was time for everything to be laid bare. Time for the truth to come crashing down on them just like it had crashed down on me. The final blow came when I confronted the one person I hadn't expected to be involved, my father. The man who had disappeared from my life without a trace. The one who had left me with nothing but broken promises and unanswered questions. When I found him, when I finally stood in front of him after all these years, I thought I was ready for anything. But I wasn't ready for what he said. "I didn't leave you," he told me, his voice barely a whisper. "I was forced to. Your mother, she made sure I was gone. She controlled everything. She made it so I had no choice." And just like that, everything shifted again. The truth I had been looking for wasn't just about my mother or my best friend. It was about the control they had over my entire life. They had twisted everything, made me believe I was the one who was broken. But I wasn't. They were. And I had the power to expose them for who they truly were. The last few weeks had been a whirlwind, a storm of revelations and emotional confrontations. But now, as I stood there, staring at the ruins of everything I had known, I felt a strange sense of calm. It wasn't victory. It wasn't peace. But it was closure. I had done what I needed to do. I had confronted the people who had destroyed me, and now it was over. The final piece fell into place when I stood at the edge of the empty house, the one that had been my home for so many years, the place that had been a prison of lies and secrets. I took one last look at it, then turned away, walking toward the unknown. As I walked, I heard the faint hum of my phone buzzing in my pocket. I didn't need to check it. I knew it was them reaching out, trying to salvage whatever they could. But I didn't care anymore. I had already moved on. And as I walked, I realized something. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their lies. I had finally become my own person. And I wasn't afraid of what came next. And if you stayed this long, you already know this wasn't just a story. This was a warning. Subscribe. And remember me.